Hi, everybody. Welcome to La Lista, a Latinx writers podcast. I am your host, Ruben Mendive, and today we have a brand new guest here brought to you via virtual Zoom room, and I'm so excited to have them on. So I like to start every conversation by having my guests introduce themselves. So your name and how you identify for the people at home.
Yeah, hey, I'm Monica Suriyage. I feel like I fall into a lot of categories. I am Afro-Latina. I'm also biracial, BLASIAN, which that one I still have a little bit of trouble claiming, but it's true. I guess I'm also technically a HAPA because of that. But yeah, just a little multicultural blending pot over here.
So that sort of leads me to my follow-up question. I like to ask guests, where are you from? And what's the short version? What's the long version? Because I'm sure you get it all the time, like a lot of us do.
Oh my God, absolutely. People are like, where are you from? And when people ask you that, you know what they mean.
Yeah.
And sometimes just to be like, not give them what they want, I just go like, oh, I'm from Pennsylvania.
They hate that.
And they hate it. They're like, no, really though. But that's the short answer. I'm from Pennsylvania. And long answer, my parents are both immigrants from tropical islands. My mom is from the Dominican Republic, and my dad is from Sri Lanka, which over the past couple of years, I think has really hit the spotlight a little bit more. Like when I was growing up, nobody knew where it was from, where it was. And now it's like a very popular like vacation spot, but it's like the little island under India. So very different cultures, but also, they have their similarities too. And they both immigrated to the US in I think the 80s and to different parts of the country, but eventually both wound up in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, which is like Amish country. Like it's very white. The Amish are everywhere slowing down traffic, which is fair because I think, they were like the OGs and everything built around them. So keep doing your thing. But yeah, it's known for like Amish country. And yeah, so being from Lancaster, Pennsylvania, but being the mix that I am can be a little confusing for some.
Yeah. And so what prompted your parents, to leave like their home country?
For my dad, it was school. He went to BYU, which I don't think he realized is like super Mormon. I think he was just like a school that I got into in the US, So he left for school and then stayed. My mom came with her sisters and her mom, and I think it was just something they had kind of been planning. I actually don't fully know why then, like why now. But her whole family came here together. And some of her sisters were young enough to still be in school. And I think even though technically she was older, she also went to high school in the US for a little bit.
How did they settle in Pennsylvania? How did that happen?
Right? I don't know. I think, my dad got a job there. So he was like, okay. Like he was just kind of going where the opportunities were. Like, all right, I guess I'm here now. And my mom had family in New York, but I think they came to a relative that was also in Lancaster, and then they lived there. They all lived at my grandmother's house for a while. But yeah, they just kind of like, this is where the people we know are, so we're going to go here. And then my dad's like, this is where the job is, so I'm going to go here. In like the 80s, where I feel like there probably weren't a whole lot of people that looked like them at the time. There are more now. But I think back then especially, it was like, wow, we're really fish out of water here.
Yeah. And so how'd your parents meet? Like, do they have a love story? Like, do you know it?
Yeah, they met at a bar in Lancaster, which is so funny because like they are so not that person. Like they don't really go out. They're great dancers when they are out. And I think it was like a dance thing. But like neither of my parents drank. So when they talk about being at a bar, I'm just like, what was that? Like that's not how you are at all. But my mom always jokes that like when they saw each other, they could immediately tell they were both immigrants just from like across the room, like could like laser focused on that. And that two, they both didn't like each other's outfits and were like, I'm gonna fix that. Like two about each other.
I'm curious of what was it like growing up in Lancaster, Pennsylvania? Like, Can you sort of just describe your experience of it, especially for people that have never been there?
Yeah, Lancaster also is another place that I feel like over the past few years has become super hip. It like was not that when I was growing up, but like now there's like condos selling in downtown Lancaster for like almost $1 million. My friends from home are like, what is happening? But yeah, at the time it was just like a small town, and I feel like I can't even really call it that anymore. Like that's not even accurate anymore. But growing up there, I went to Catholic school for like all of schooling. So my classes were always very small. And there weren't ever, if ever, any other Black students with me. There were a few other Latin students, but I didn't even categorize myself as being that then. Like I was like too little to understand, but there were a few of them. And when I look at the pictures, I'm the only Black one. I feel like, maybe there were some other kids that came and went, but I was definitely the only one that stayed all the way through to 8th grade and then beyond to graduating from high school in the Catholic school system. In high school, there were definitely more Black kids, but I never had any classes with them. Like the class track that I was on was almost all white in almost every class. Not exclusively, but like 98% of the time I would be the only Black kid in the room, which, has its issues for sure, but is also good fuel for storytelling later.
And so, like, what did your parents do when you were growing up for a living?
Yeah, my dad recently retired, and he worked at Y&S Candies, which is an affiliate of Hershey, and they make Twizzlers. So growing up, we were always getting free candy. Sometimes they would give us stuff that hadn't come out yet, so we could like rate it. Like, what did we think? A lot of that stuff I never even saw in stores. I was like, oh, they must have scrapped that one. Like, that's not happening, I guess. And I think for a while, he worked in more like the flavor side of things. Then he shifted to being like on the floor, like kind of more like in the physical production. And my mom still is a medical assistant. So she works in hospitals, she takes care of people. She works right now in, I think like the geriatric wing. So she's working with older people now, but she's a caregiver through and through. So she's just, taking care of people and making sure that they're okay when they're in the hospital.
Yeah. And so, I'm always curious about people during their high school years. So like 14 to 18, I sort of frame it in these 3 questions. Who were you? Who were you pretending to be? And how do you think other people saw you?
Wow. Heavy. Okay. I was a band kid. I did all the music stuff, choir, band, musical, dance, all that stuff. So that's probably how I defined myself. I think I was pretending in a way to be white. Like I used to really talk away from being a Black person. I had one friend in high school that was almost the exact same mix as me. Their name is Sunji. Shout out Sunji. They're my best friend from high school at the time, because when we realized that we were almost the same thing, we were like, what? There's another one? So we did everything together. So it was me and them as like the 2 half this, half that kids. But I still was really, really, really trying to be accepted into the white community. And I remember I would have friends being like, well, you're not really Black, because you're half this and your hair looks like this. So like, it's okay. You're not really Black. And I'd be like, oh yeah, I'm not really Black, because that would be bad. Like that would be so bad. So yeah, in high school, I was definitely trying to just like blend in and like be part of the whole thing. And I really wanted people to like me. Like that was like a big, now I don't care, but like in those years, I really wanted everyone to like me. I think other people saw me as being manic. Like I had a lot of energy, and I really liked involving people in what I wanted to do. Like I remember one year for Valentine's Day, I made anti-Valentines, and I thought they were so clever. They were like saying how Valentine's Day is awful and this is a stupid holiday. And I thought people would think they were funny, and people did not think they were funny. Like it was not well received. I think people were like, "Oh, she's really weird." But I think people saw me as somebody who had a little too much energy and needed to just calm down.
So, I'm really curious for like people that are like in sort of like mixed households and like multicultural households. Like, what did your household look like? Like, was there more influence of a certain type than the other? Just because sometimes it depends on grandparents or just extended family. So like, what did your household look like?
Oh, that's a cool question. My house was very evenly split, I have to say. And both cultures, honestly, have very similar aesthetics. Like the vibe is, both cultures really put a strong emphasis on color. So our house was every color. The walls were yellow and orange and green and purple. And my dad is also an artist. So he was always painting, and his paintings were, and still are, everywhere. All over every available surface is some piece of art. And he would paint on the ceilings. So like the kitchen had like a sky painted on it, and the dining room den area had like pink horses painted on it. And I thought it was so funny because he wouldn't let me paint my room. Like he was like, no, your room needs to be white so that when you sleep, like he thought it had something to do with like dreams or something. And I was like, the house literally looks like a box of crayons exploded in here, and I'm not allowed to paint my room? Are you kidding me? I eventually convinced them to paint one wall. But there were lots of trinkets from both cultures everywhere, like little elephant statues that are from Sri Lanka and little dancing ladies, that are from the DR. And what they like to do really meshed well. My mom likes to sew, so there are just like pillows and curtains and rugs and like, just like, there's a lot. The house is very packed with stuff. There's a lot. They should probably have a yard sale. There's a lot of stuff. But definitely a good mix of both cultures with food too. Like even split Dominican food, Sri Lankan food. We get both at like one meal. You get both. And like they would kind of mush some things together sometimes, which is awesome. And they both cook. So there's like so much food too. And I think it was a pretty even culture mix.
Yeah. And, I'm curious of like, what is your experience of like your parents' homelands? Like, have you visited, like, what is your connection to like their home, like countries?
Yeah, my mom hasn't been back very often, maybe a couple of times in like the 40 years since she left. So I've never been to the DR actually. And I have cousins, her sister's kids, who are even like, they're very ingrained in the culture more so than I am. And they have been, they go every once in a while. But Sri Lanka, I have been a bunch. I think the first time I must have been like 2 or 3. And we try to go every maybe 4 or 5 years. We were going to go right when COVID happened. That was like going to be our next trip. So I think we're trying to figure out how to get back there. But for my mom, it's different because most of her family moved with her to the US. So I feel like there's just less. There's some relatives still there, but the core group, her siblings and her mom, all went together. My dad still has most of his siblings still live there. So when we go, most of the extended family is there. My grandmother was still there. So when we go there, it is more of like a family event and everybody gets together and, there's like a lot of catching up to do. But with my mom, it's like, we're all here already. So less pressure to go, I think.
Sometimes when you have a mixed identity, like what is your relationship to like this two communities? Like, have you been able to find a place with both communities? Like what has that relationship been like?
My brother and I talk about this a lot, how like we don't quite fit in fully with either side. It's like my brother and I are the outliers in the middle, because on my mom's side, most of my cousins are either like all Black. They can fully be like, we are Black, or they are half Black like my mom, but the other half is also of Latin heritage. So they can, they speak Spanish very well. They're fully Latin. And Rohan and I, my brother, cannot really claim that. Like neither of us, I speak Spanish. It's not great. I actually don't know if Rohan speaks Spanish at all. But on my dad's side, it's the same thing. They're all 100% Sri Lankan, like siblings, married Sri Lankan people. Cousins are Sri Lankan, fluent in the language. Most of them live there. And then it's Rohan and I that are like half this other thing. We're also much darker than all of them on both sides. So we have always kind of stuck out in our family circles, and it's been okay. Like everybody's very loving, everybody's very kind, but every once in a while somebody will say something that's just like, okay, yeah, I know we're different. Thank you. Like I get it.
And so like, what'd you do after high school? Like, did you have a plan? Did things go according to plan?
I think so. Yeah, I towards the end of high school, I think is when I decided I wanted to go into film, and Before that, I wanted to be a doctor. That was the plan. Was like I'm going to be a doctor, and then I took one of the upper level science classes towards the end of high school, and I was like, oh wait, I hate this. Like, never mind, I hate this. We had to dissect a cat, which was fine. Like, I wasn't squeamish about that. I was just like, I don't know what any of this is. Like, I don't understand. So never mind. Um, and so then I went to school for filmmaking with a concentration in screenwriting. And they have a great program where if you're interested in that, you can intern in LA for a semester. So I came here with school, and then I had one more year left, but I kind of felt like I had some momentum. So I was like, I don't want to go back to school. I'm not doing that. So I switched to online classes, and I finished virtually, and then I moved to New York for a little bit, and then I moved to LA to really focus on like getting into this industry and making things. And I've been here ever since. And that was like 6 or 7 years ago now. Oh my God, yeah.
So what got you into film? Like, how did you know that that was something you wanted to study and especially like concentrate on screenwriting?
I've always loved movies. And in high school, I was kind of like the movie person. Like, I knew all the movie facts, I knew what year things came out, who was in them, who wrote them, you know. But I didn't think it was something that I could do. Like, it did not seem like a career. Sometimes it still doesn't, but it really then didn't seem like a career. And I think I had a friend that was like, why don't you go to school for film? Like, why don't you just do that? And I was like, oh, yeah, I can do that. Yeah, I can do that. So then that's when I kind of shifted and really focused on that. And I was interested in screenwriting because I always loved English in school, and I loved writing assignments, and like especially when it was creative and you could story. So I was like, I'm going to try to do this. And along the way, I picked up directing as well, and that's probably as equal a focus as the writing part now. But I didn't anticipate that. I thought I was going to strictly be a screenwriter, and then I had a professor in college that was like, "You should direct too," and I was like, "No," and she was like, "You're way too controlling. You have to direct." I was like, "Okay, I'll try that too." So now I do both.
Yeah. And so like I'm famous for saying that the first 2 years in LA are the hardest, but sort of if you stick them out, then you sort of know you're here to stay just because at any point before then you could totally just move back home. So what were those first 2 years like?
You are so right. You're absolutely right. It's like those first 2 years are like, you know, that's when there's a big wave of going home, because I actually moved here with a huge group of friends. The program that I did to intern here, there must have been like 35 of us. I want to say like 25 of us moved to LA right away. So like we were all like back. And then over the first 2 years, a lot of us ended up coming back to Philly. My first 2 years were amazing. Probably two of the best years of my whole life. I lived in this huge house in Burbank that had 7 bedrooms and 4 bathrooms, and 2 living rooms, and the one living room had a bar in it. So we threw party after party after party. Like you know, we were all like right out of school, like, and none of us had jobs also. So like we just partied, and we were all friends. And my current 3 best friends I met in that house. I didn't know them before, and they were just, I moved in and they already lived there. And now we make stuff together. We're like a collective now. And yeah, it was just like such a good time. And we would like go to the beach, and we'd go to brunch, and we'd go out. And now I'm like, who told me I could do that? I didn't have any money. Like, where was that money coming from? That's why I'm in credit card debt now, because we like partied so hard those first like 3 years, and I was just putting it all on credit cards. I don't regret it, but that, like, we talk about it now. We're like, who was funding this lifestyle? Because none of us had money, but it was super fun, and it was really worth it.
You're in LA, you're trying to make your dreams come true. I'm curious of like what your parents thought of like you getting into film. Like sort of like did they sort of not even know like what it was or what you were getting into?
I don't think they really understood what it was. They're starting to, because I'm deeper in the industry now, and they can see that. So they're like, okay, she's not homeless, and she has a car. Whatever she's doing is working, you know? But at the time, I think they were maybe a little concerned, but always supportive. Like, I will say there was never like, get a real job or any of that. I think I hustle. Like, that is part of my personality. I like, if I want something, I will push so hard for it to the point where it's like, maybe I need to stop, and then I will try for another, like, another tier above that. And I think they know that about me. So they were like, she'll figure. And also, our family, a lot of us leave home and like very far from, like my mom traveled so far, my dad traveled so far. Some of my dad's siblings also moved away from Sri Lanka, and they're all over the world. So like we're very global. We all live all over the place. So I think the fact that I wanted to move so far away, they're like, all right, that's just what we do. Like, we leave. And I have some friends that like, they're like, oh, I miss home, or my mom doesn't want me to leave, or I know this guy from home that he like kind of half lives with his parents just because his mom is afraid of him being away. And I'm like, wow, we're so not like that. They're like, bye. Like, we'll see you when we see you.
Yeah.
And I go home when I can, but it's never, luckily from them, they've been very.
No, my family's the same. My when I moved to LA, it was like me and 3 suitcases on the plane, and my mom just like didn't even get out of the car. She was like, all right, see ya. And I was like, okay, no hug. Okay, good. I guess I'll just go.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Oh, okay, bye. I'll see you at Christmas. Bye. Like, it's because they believe in you. That's why.
Yeah, exactly. I also thought I'm pretty sure she also thought like he'll be back in a week, but I wasn't. So, like you're in LA, you're hustling. So like, when did you feel like you started to sort of get some momentum and sort of like figure out what the hell you were even doing out here?
Right. Oh my gosh. The first time where I was like, oh, I think we're on the right track was when me and my 3 best friends, plus some other friends, most of which who lived in that house, we all made a movie together. I wrote and directed it. And, everybody took a role. One friend was the DP, another friend edited it, one friend production designed it. Everybody was just like, how can we make this happen? And we shot it at the house. The whole thing takes place during a party. So we rallied all of our friends to come be the extras. I think some of them thought they were really going to a party, but it wasn't a real party. And then we edited it, we made it, we put it out, and people liked it. Like it went to a few festivals, and it led to bigger opportunities from people like liking the work. And now I watch it and I almost cry because it's so like, we're like so young, and there's so many mistakes. The sound is terrible. Like, it's so bad in some ways, but it's the first time that we made something, and I'm still very proud of it. I stand by it. And I think that was the first time that I was like, we can do this. Like, if all of us, not everybody in that group is still part of my life, but the core people, like, if we can do this together. And I think that was the first time that really clicked for us. So since then, we've made a lot of projects together. We always collaborate. It's me, Krista, Caitlin, and Chelsea. And we do a lot of work together. And I think that was the first time we realized that we work well together and that we have similar stories we want to tell and that we can tolerate each other, because sometimes you want to work with people and you don't get along.
No, and I actually watched the film, and it's like a horror short film.
Yeah.
It was like muy spooky. Like I love watching it because you mentioned it. There's a party there, and it's like that weird thing of it's just such a weird combo of like parasite, like infection, horror, and then also just like, does this guy like me at this party? Like,
yes. Because that was my priority at the time. I was like, I just want the boy at the party to like me. And when they didn't, it felt like the world was ending. So we just combined those two things.
No, it definitely flashed me back to college and me being like, are they into me? Oh, wait, who said what? Like, there's like little people are talking behind each other's back trying to figure it all out. And you're right, it does feel like the world's ending, where at the end of the night, you're like, okay, so what now? And, you had an answer for that.
Oh, thank you. It's so nice that you watched it. Yeah, it definitely channels exactly where my head was at the time. Like, now I'm like, oh my God, I don't even care about people like at all anymore. But then I was like, I just want you to like me. Like,
yeah, now it's like, leave me alone. I'm trying to have fun. Like,
exactly. Now it's like, go away.
So what were you able to build from that short? Like, you said that you got some attention from it. So like, sort of, what were you able to build from it? What did people like about it?
I think that was the first time I also like was able to like explode color onto the screen. And my, you know, like I said, my whole background is based on color, like they're colorful and vibrant. And I think that's the first time I was able to like put that into work. So that was the beginning of like a style that I still use. I think it's matured a little bit now, but just like that color pop moment started with that film, and like my whole style started there. And I think also, so like that film, Black and Red Out, it went to a few festivals, one of which was Axe Wound Film Festival in Vermont. And I remember Chelsea and I being like, oh, we're going to go to Vermont. And we went, and I had never been there. It was like beautiful. We went to the festival and we met one of the, I think she may have been a programmer or a producer, very involved in the festival. She's awesome. Her name's Ashley Blackwell. And it turns out she went to the same college as us. She went to Temple 2 in Philly. So we just hit it off with her. And she has really been like a champion of us ever since then. She has featured me on her blog. She's a horror writer and historian. So she just knows all things horror. And a few years after Black and Red Out, she emailed me and she was like, hey, I'm working on this documentary about the history of Black horror. I would love for you to be in it. And I was like, okay. And she like so downplayed what it was, but it was this huge thing. Like Jordan Peele was in it, Rachel True, Tony Todd, Keith David, like all these huge names, and I'm in it. Like I'm here too, because Ashley, who I met because of Black and Red Out, asked me to, and then now because of that, people saw that documentary, and somebody reached out to me who I actually knew from kind of another job. But then she saw the documentary and reached out, and now she's my manager, and people see it and they're like, oh, I should maybe find out if she's working on something, you know. And that all of that started from making Black and Red Out. So it's nice to be able to connect the dots, like what led to what, and hopefully there'll be a longer trail still to go.
And so, like, what got you into horror? Like, why that genre?
I actually did not like horror growing up at all. Like at all. Like my cousins would watch scary movies and I would be hiding in like the corner, you know, like, and I think seeing 28 Days Later really changed my mind about the genre, partially because the Black woman doesn't die. She actually kicks ass and like doesn't die. So that kind of like something woke up in my brain when I saw that movie, like, oh, this can be like a whole different thing. And I also kind of realized that like you can use horror to say something else that's a little more subversive and a few more layers down. You can kind of say one thing and really mean 5 other things, you know, more so than other genres. I think comedy, you can also do that. I think horror and comedy are very closely linked. But that was really interesting to me, that like you can be scary and this, you know, this is the vibe, but I'm really trying to say this is what I really mean. I also didn't see a lot of people like me working in this space at the time. This is maybe like 5 years ago, and just in 5 years, that is different. But it was kind of exciting. I kind of liked being at the front of my stories in the genre. And it's still exciting. Like, it's still like, oh, there's a perspective that I feel like we have that some of the OG horror people don't. And there's also more of a demand for like a higher level, a higher mindset within horror that's really exciting. I originally wanted to tell like dramas and like the sad, you know, like, oh my God, are they going to be okay? You know, like a moment in someone's life. And I still want to do that, but I'm definitely excited about horror.
Yeah, you know, and I think a lot of people underestimate like genre, sort of TV and film. And I think sci-fi has been more popular for sort of vehicles for social issues. Like horror has always done that too. Like even if you think of like Night of the Living Dead or like Scream, like it's always been there. And I think you're right. We're sort of turned the corner on like what you can do that for like just like Black and brown folks to sort of like tell our stories through these like weird horror, like, and you know, a lot of that is just from the resurgence from like Jordan Peele has sort of just like woken it up, and now we have like Lovecraft Country, which, you know, I was so ready to see that second season that like
I know. Did you see the tweet of like what the country was going to look like? I was like, give me that. I'm ready. Hopefully we do still get it somehow.
Yeah, I know. And I saw your tweet too of like Handmaid's Tale can do this, Man in the High Castle can do this, but like this seemed like too much. Interesting.
Right. That's how I feel. I was like, oh, okay, I see.
Yeah. Sort of how you got it on my radar was you were part of this LALIFF slash Netflix Inclusion Fellowship where, they gave you some money to like make a short. So can you just talk us through that whole process of like you hearing about it to applying till then, like what the program did for you?
Oh my gosh, it was the best experience. I will hype LALIFF up forever. But I have a friend, Danielle Perez, also Afro-Latina, amazing. She's hilarious.
Oh, yeah.
She just posted in a group or something, like the flyer for the fellowship. And I looked into it and I was like, oh, I qualify for this. I'll apply. And before I even submitted the application, I sat down with Chelsea, who's my producer for pretty much everything. And we kind of ideated what is this going to be together because I had a script that I had already written that was a horror and we were getting ready to shoot that on our own. But it didn't quite feel right for this. It didn't feel like elevated enough. So I was looking into like Dominican folklore and I was like, what's exciting about my culture stories? Like what is the cool, scary? I know every culture has a scary thing, So I was like, what's the DR's scary thing? And what mostly came up was chupacabras, which I knew what those were from my mom and my cousin, but I didn't want to make just a monster that eats animals. I was like, whatever. And then I found the myth of the Ciguapa, and I was like, ooh, this is good. So then I showed that to Chelsea, and she was like, what if she kills her boyfriend? And I was like, yes. So then I wrote the script, and I wrote the treatment, and like assembled the materials necessary to apply. You kind of had to really lay out how you were it. Like, do you have a producer? Do you have who's gonna, like, do you have resources? Like, where are you gonna shoot? So I made that document, and then I submitted. And I actually didn't. The day they were gonna tell people almost ended, and I didn't hear back. So I thought maybe that was good news, but it turned out I had written my email address incorrectly on the submission, so they couldn't find me. And like 2 days later, I got a DM on Instagram, and it was Diana, the director of the program, like looking for me. She was like, "Hello, like, did you apply for this?" And I was like, "Yes." And she was like, "Okay, what's your email address?"
Oh my God.
And then she emailed me like, "Okay, congratulations, you're in." And apparently they were about to kind of move on because I hadn't seen the message, so like time was going by. Would have been a nightmare, but and then in the program they had like mentors that were all amazing, and they helped with different parts of development and production and post-production. So there were people offering their experts like every step of the way, helping however they could, and the timeline was kind of short. I think we got in November, so we shot in February for 2 days, and we just cranked it out. We were like, go, 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 like, get it done. And I'm very proud of it. I think it turned out really well. It's been such a career highlight. Like, definitely, like, I feel like I bumped up another tier because of that. And writing the script was challenging because we were trying to cram in so much lore in such a small amount of time and stay true to the myth, but also get a modern spin. And and then all the 5 shorts premiered together at the LALIFF festival, and it was just the best night. It could be in person because like things started opening up, so we were able to go to the theater. And the other 4 films are amazing. They're all so good. And it was just, I could not say better things about the program. Like, I think everybody should apply next year. I think they're also trying to focus on different branches of the Latin community. So this was Afro-Latin, but next year it could be something else. Next year it could be dreamers, or it could be, first generation, or it could be, like LGBTQ, or, so many different places it could fall. So I just think everybody should apply for it.
Yeah. And, I also saw that you also do a lot of digital content. So I am curious about that because it's like, what is that world like? Like, how did you get into it? Like,
oh my gosh, it's a whole different thing. That's what I do for my day job. I direct a show that airs on Snapchat, if you believe it. And I pitched to Snapchat, and I weirdly also had like was a YouTuber for like 5 seconds. But I just kind of fell into that as like a job that can be done that is like film industry adjacent. So it's like a day job to like survive, pay the bills and stuff. But you're on set, and you're practicing directing, the sets are very small, like they're like mini, but you're still, you're making creative decisions, you're communicating with the crew, and like you're getting the product you need. So that has really taught me how to work fast on set. And I ended up doing that just because around the same time that Black and Red Out came out, actually, maybe a year or two before, a friend was working at one of those digital media companies that like no longer exist. Most of them don't exist. But he was working at one, and he was like, "Hey, they're like looking for people who make videos. You should make a video." And I was like, "Okay." So I made a video of myself like reviewing a celebrity memoir. I think it was like Tila Tequila's memoir or something.
Oh,
Like it was so that woman needs help. Like that. Oh my god. But I made like a funny video of me, reacting to the book, and they were like, "Oh yeah, you should come in." So that was a series that I hosted for a while of just like reading bad celebrity books. And then they started a beauty channel, so I left and I went to the beauty channel and I hosted a show there. And then from there, I've just been that kind of started it. Now I work in digital, not as much on camera anymore. Every once in a while, but more so like behind the camera, making the videos now.
yeah. And so I also saw that you have a podcast. You're part of the podcast universe now, Scaredy Chat. So can you sort of talk to us about like why, how, and like, I don't know, when, what?
Right? So the woman who runs the YouTube channel that I was first on, my first dabble into digital, her name is Gail. We recently reconnected just because I emailed her. I was just like, "Hey Gail, like what's up?" Because I was looking for just to see if anybody needed help with Snapchat, because that's where I ended up. So I sent her an email, and she was like, "Oh, you know what? I'm actually looking for a horror writer." So I linked her with my friend Caitlin, who is also an amazing writer. Because I was like, "I'm too busy, so I'll recommend my friend." And then Gail came back and she emailed both of us, and she was like, "Actually, you guys should host a podcast." And we were like, "Okay." So now we host this podcast. It's called Scaredy Chat, and yeah, we interview people about their childhood fears, and it's so fun hearing what people were afraid of when we were kids, because a lot of us were afraid of the same thing, like the same irrational thing, like piranhas. Like yes, I was afraid of piranhas. Why? Why are we afraid of piranhas? So it's been super fun, and I had never really been involved with podcasting before, but Gail has been guiding us through it, and it's been a really fun thing, but also just kind of appeared, because she knows that Caitlin and I have the horror knowledge, and Caitlin and I are both very chatty, and we watch everything, we read everything, we're both writers, so that makes it really easy to kind of just like talk about all the horror stuff.
Yeah, no, and I listened to a couple episodes, and it's funny, like how many people have like a sleepover. I saw a movie I wasn't supposed to. Like that was me with the Blair Witch.
Yes!
Like I should not have seen it. I saw it accidentally, and now images are burned into my mind.
Yes, it's always the thing when you're at the sleepover that you were not supposed to see that stays with you forever.
Yeah, and no, I highly recommend it. Everyone should check it out. You have a lot of interesting folks on, and it's just fun to like remember, like, yeah, like why were we all scared of piranhas? And it's like, because they were in so many movies, like for no reason.
No, they had no business in being in that many movies in the 90s. Like, what? Like, why? Thank you. That's very nice of you to say.
Every Latinx folk I talk to, like 99% of them, they're always like, I don't know if I'm doing this correctly. Like, I don't know if I fit in. Like, so like, what has been your version of that? What has been your journey to like sort of claiming this like identity?
I think it's still happening, right? But I think the most recent thing has been finally no longer trying to fit in and just being myself, which sounds like such a cliche thing to say, but I feel like when I was trying to be what people wanted me to be, it wasn't working. Even when I was trying to be what people wanted me to be as a version of myself, if that makes sense. Like I was writing for a show for like one of these digital media. I won't say which one, but I was on the writing staff for a show that they were doing. And each episode of this show was kind of targeting like a different issue. Like one of them was like, body image. And there was one about like millennial debt and one about police brutality. And I actually volunteered to write that one because I was like, I feel like I can do this right. And I wrote a very, they're supposed to be like witty, like 5 things you didn't know about stop and frisk, like some kind of like weird spin on stuff. And I didn't do it for that. I just kind of like, I almost wrote like a poem instead of like the kitschy, quirky version of it. And I didn't get any notes on it. So I thought that meant that it was good, like it was good to go. Because I had written another episode and that one had been like worked out and everything. And this was towards the end of the job, but I thought because they didn't give me any notes that it was to go. And then I was excited to see it come out because I was like, oh, I wrote this like, important thing. Like this is going to be cool. And I watched it. It was not what I wrote at all. Somebody rewrote it. And I think I know who it was. And it was like just like a white guy, that like redid it. And I was like, oh, so you don't really want us to be, you know what I mean? Like, you don't really want us to be the ones that say this unless we say it in a way that is okay with you. And it would have been one thing if I had gotten notes, like, hey, can we change whatever? No notes, no nothing, just redone. And that was like, I was like, oh, okay. So I think that I'm trying to do, it felt like I'm trying to do this one way, but this isn't even working. So after that, I became a lot less apologetic about myself, what I'm trying to say, and how I'm trying to say it. Like now I'm just like, I just say what I want now and write what I want. And I try not to put myself in a position where I need a white man to say yes. In terms of my creativity, my day job, yes, that is still what happens. But in terms of like what's pushing me forward as an artist, I don't give them control anymore. And I don't think any of the really useful opportunities have come from white men. Honestly, the things that have pushed me forward have come from people like me. So I think once I stopped trying to like meld into that part of the workforce is when I started to feel like I was doing it right.
I'm curious of like your own writing. Like, do you see like there are certain themes in all your work? Like sometimes as writers, we're telling the same story over and over, just trying to work stuff out. So like, what are some of the through lines that you find that come through all your work?
Oh, yes. I think a common theme is a need from approval from men, because for so long I was still working that out in my own mind. And I think like you saw Black and Red Out, that's definitely part of that. But I think a lot of my projects had that in it. And I have a feature that I wrote that a lot of it was like missing a man, who is gone. And I think the project with LALIFF was the first time I was finally able to subvert that a little bit and kind of free myself of that. Like the first half of it is looking for approval from a man. The second half of it is realizing he cannot give it to you. Only you can give it to you, and also killing him. He sucks. So that's definitely been a theme of like approval from men, wanting it now to realizing I don't need it. And it'll probably still end up being a thing in future stories, but hopefully more from of a rejection standpoint, as opposed to the reason why they're upset. That and just also like colorful stuff. Like I think all my work is very colorful. It's going to stay colorful. This last project was like dark and like in the woods, but still very colorful. And also stories of like kind of like family and being shaped by cultural identity, because that's something I'm still figuring out about myself. And I feel like that's in a lot of my projects coming up as well.
So, I'm always curious about who are some of the writers that my guests are fans of. So these could be heroes, peers, friends of yours, people you creep on social media who don't know who you are, but you're obsessed with their work. So who are some of those people for you?
Yes. Oh my gosh. People I creep on, although she recently followed me back, so let's be but Sierra Teller Ornelas from Rutherford Falls. Mm-hmm. I think she's so funny. She was a writer on Brooklyn Nine-Nine, and now she's created this show, Rutherford Falls, which I think does a really good job of like showing people your culture, but not bending it to fit into a certain box. And mm-hmm. I think she's just been very clever about it. And she's just objectively very funny. I feel like sometimes people are like, well, they're just talking about this one thing, but she's just funny across the board. Also, Stephen Canals as an Afro-Latin writer. I think he's very talented. He works with LALIFF as well, So that was cool to like be associated with the same program. But obviously Pose is amazing. So I don't really have to say much more about that. Pose is dope. And then like kind of like pie in the sky. Like this is why I'm in movies now. Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind is one of my favorite movies ever, and that was the first one of the first movies I saw that was just like a ballet. It was so beautiful and surrealist, and that was written by Charlie Kaufman and Michel Gondry, and I love what they do as well. Science of Sleep, also Charlie Kaufman, a great film, and also of course Jordan Peele, like he just changed the game with Get Out. You have to throw the props where props are due. I have a friend who's not in film, but we were talking about Get Out the other day, and they said something so clever that I feel like they saw because they're not in film. And they were like, this movie works forward and backwards. Like the scenes from the back make sense if you were to watch it in reverse. And I was like, oh my God, you're right. And I think that is the sign of a really successful script, to kind of switch the order of this and you're still going to get what's happening. So yeah, those are probably my main ones.
And so where can people follow you on social media?
Yeah, I'm on Instagram as Harmonica Blues. I do not play the harmonica. I get a lot of follows from harmonica accounts. But yeah, that's Instagram. And then Twitter, you can find me at horrorchata_. I thought I was very clever with that one. Yeah.
I like to ask my guests to help me title the episode. So I have a prompt. So the prompt is a blank Latinx writer, and you can add words, you can mix all around, just whatever feels true to you. I also use it as a community building tool so that when people see the title, they can look at it and be like, oh, that's like me, or I should check this person out. Yeah. What do you got?
Yeah. I guess I would say if you're a BLASIAN, Pennsylvanian, AFRO-LATINX writer.
Perfect. And with that, I want to thank you so much for being on the podcast. I was so excited to check out your work. I sort of knew a little bit about you, but it was great to get to know you better.
Oh, it's so nice to meet you, Ruben. You're very good at this. The questions are on point.